Would you say that newbies coming in a lot more confident into this matchup?
I would think so if they've been watching a lot of these games, and I agree with Winter. Something seems a bit off. I almost put Vici Gaming with like Empire. These aren't the teams that I've been watching throughout the whole Dota season. They've been pretty dominant. They've been performing very sharp, crisp gameplay, but I don't know what's happening. You know, Ice doesn't seem to be able to really explore. Like, he'll put out a Brood game here and there, which is nice, but he's been doing a lot of Tusk games, and that's just not like the Ice I've come to know. Something a bit spicy, and he's doing stuff back in the day, dropping items in front of his opponents, kind of showing them that he's like he's got their number, but I haven't really seen that so far this tournament. And for Empire, you know, it's kind of the same story. They're more trying to be uniform, push, aggressive, raw style, and that tenacity doesn't really seem to be there. They need to light that fire.
Yeah, you were just talking about it because it's interesting because when Cinderin sits here in the very beginning, he was like really excited about Empire on day one. He was like, I'm so excited to watch their games. Didn't pan out. You know, let's quickly talk about Empire. They're not coming up here on our stream right now for a match, but what is it about Empire? I mean, do you think it's just that's just what happens when they come to TI? Like they're just not going to perform well in the early stages, or what happened? Because a lot of people were very excited about Empire. They're like, yes, this is their chance to finally prove all those other haters that they're going to move onward and they're going to show a strong showing at TI5.
I mean, only they know that. It's easy to kind of think like that because of what happened even last year with them. But I know they can do well on LAN. You know, I saw them firsthand do well at like Star Ladder Season 11 on LAN. They performed well, given it was in front of probably like more of a hometown crowd. But like, I don't know. I guess maybe when you come into something like TI, it's definitely a whole different level, and maybe if you don't have the best day one, then your team starts butting heads a bit. Who knows? You know, I'd be very interested.
It might have something to do with their players being very young. They might have actually have a team that has the average age of the players are much younger. I think Aloha is like 17 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the rest of the players they are not familiar, apart from Always Wanna Fly and Silent. I think they're the two oldest players in the team. So it might have to do with something like they're expecting too much. Like the expectations are really high. And under pressure, the younger players sometimes, like especially Resolution, we were talking about his Storm a lot. Like he seems to be it's one of his best heroes, but he's always jumping, like wasting mana, not getting the right jumps for his team. The initiations were not on point. In the past few months, we actually, every time we see him play the hero, he's really confident, and every time he starts a fight, it's always going to end well for his team. But so far in the event, his Storm is, I think, by far the biggest letdown of all his heroes.
All right. Well, we have a couple eyes coming back to the match now at hand. Vici Gaming going up against Newbie. We do have some moments from Vici Gaming's latest games, of course, after we saw Newbie. I mean, they had a really good showing against Empire. We'll take a look at Vici Gaming's games, how they look coming into this matchup. Now, this is against EG. It was their game one versus EG.
Vici has been pretty volatile. In this best of two versus the EG, I also thought they fared very well. They looked very good versus Empire, but then they got 2-0'd by, I think, C-Deck, and yeah, overall there's just something missing from them. I also think for teams like Vici and Empire, they're going to be so much more disappointed if they start off in the lower bracket as opposed to Newbie. It's like, oh, well, we probably thought we were going to be here anyways, and, you know, they have a more happy-go-lucky attitude. And this was a huge turnaround from Vici, where I think this is the one where they jumped the gyro before his team was, jumped the storm before I think his team was ready. And there's like moments of brilliance like that you see from Vici. It's like, oh my gosh, this team is a top 3 team. And we've seen that. DAC, second place, and TI4, second place. And all throughout the year, it seems they were doing well. And then right after DAC, maybe a month or two after that period, they just were on a steady decline, and no one actually really knows why. It seems like the patch fits them. Like their drafter certainly is very experienced and confident, and no one exactly knows why. I'm sure they're trying to figure it out themselves.
I think it all started when they had the roster change with Black, moving Black, changing from Black to How. They are both very different in their playstyle. Like Black is more, I feel when he plays, people talk about, okay, he doesn't speak fluent Chinese, but he actually does. I mean, his Chinese is somewhat good. I've spoken Chinese to him before, and people are saying it's much better for the team to have, like, everyone that speaks the same language is very important for them. But after swapping Black for How, it seems like their team play has been deteriorating, and everything somehow hasn't been as good as compared to having Black on the team.
Yeah, I mean, Dakota, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think there's a clear reason why this is happening, or maybe it's just small things here and there that are culminating to Vici Gaming not performing as well as most people might expect?
I mean, I agree with Winter. I mean, obviously, you can just kind of throw out there that maybe it was a communication difference. They brought in Hao, who I feel personally has a pretty different play style than Black does, and it's not just being able to communicate verbally, it's being able to communicate with your team through play style in the game, I imagine, as well. And they had to shift that around a bit. Maybe they're not being as innovative as they used to be. It seems like they were caught out in that series against EG. In the other game, I believe, is when EG ran that off-lane Enchantress, and they really took advantage of a team like Vici, where sometimes they could be a bit transparent. They almost baited out the Bounty Hunter in the opening round, and they built around that, so the Bounty Hunter got nothing. Literally nothing. 0 kills, 0 assists. It was crazy. So you wouldn't expect a team like Vici to be taken advantage of like that. So that is a bit concerning.
Yeah, it's weird to view them taking like the past TI's winner as their new carry as a downgrade. It's not a downgrade. It's side grade. It's just different. I view like Hao's playstyle is very similar to probably Sylar, and Black is just different. He plays like Invoker and stuff in the safe lane, which we've probably never seen Hao play. And he, like, you know, his Ember, his Razors, his Anti-Mage, those sort of things. And I don't really feel like he like pushes his opponents much like Ice does, and I feel like when they have like pressure in the safe lane, pressure in the off lane, their supports are like more likely to be able to find opportunities. But it just seems like their early game is just completely lacking. FY and Fenrir aren't. I don't know if they lack the opportunity creating skills or they're just nowhere to be found. But it just seems like their early game is not as strong as it once was.
Yeah, going back to that point where he was talking about F1 and Fenrir, when with Black, they are much more, they can do their own stuff. I think the main reason, from what I can see, is because of, it might be personalities, because when Black is in the team, maybe he doesn't provide as much of an opinion, he just like tries to blend in the team, whereas when they have Hao is more of a, like he wants to have more maybe control, because when he goes into the team, after a while, we saw him drafting for the team, so it might be a reasoning that he wants to incorporate some of his ideas into the team, whereas Black is more, I'll just try my best to follow your ideas and blend in, whereas Hao is more, there's something that I want to add in towards the team.
Right.
So that might be the issue where it's struggling for them, they're struggling to find a balance between Hao and the rest of his teammates, resulting in F1 and Fenrir not shining as much as when they were playing with Black.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, we haven't gotten to see Newbies games too much here on the mainstream. So if we were to prime this Newbie versus Vici Gaming, we're talking a little bit about Vici, maybe what their issues are, but overall, Ben, you were saying, well, the patch seems to still favor them decently enough. How do these two teams match up in playstyle? Do we have like clear priority differences, or is it really just going to come down to in-game decisions?
I mean, this is a rematch of last year,
Yeah.
and at that time, they seemed to be pretty much a mirror match, which team maybe had the better picks and was able to get that ball rolling a bit faster. Now, I don't know. I'm very curious to see if they're going to look to butt heads like they did back at TI, or if one of them is going to look to pull out something a bit different and catch their opponent off guard. It's hard to say.
I think Newbie still retains a lot of elements from last year. You can see it in the way that they move around, how early they group up, and how early they take objectives together. And even some of the hero picks, I think, are somewhat similar to last year. Whereas Vici, I think they've kind of branched off, and they do it sometimes, but it's usually with a different lineup. They incorporate like Wisp a lot more, which I don't think Newbie has turned to very often at all. They have like different mids, like Alchemist for Super, and overall it's similar for like a few of the roles, but I think that as well as the mid is where it's really different. I think like DK though is a good hero to look out for both of them.
All right, Winter, what about you?
Yeah, I think Dragon Knight is a hero that has been part of their success, like in the games for both of the teams. They have players that play the hero very well, and they are able to dictate play with the hero, like with the good item selections, be it going for the dagger or going for the Shadow Blade. So I think Dragon Knight is definitely a hero to watch out for. And the supports, I think, might be a little different, because I feel sometimes, if you talk about running junglers, I think Newbie are more, there's more chance that Newbie runs a jungling hero, whereas for Vici Gaming, they are more of laning supports, be it roaming or just sitting down, protecting the core. So that's probably the difference between the supports I can see. But they haven't been running any jungling heroes as of late. So
All right. Well, we are waiting for the teams to get ready here, Newbie versus Vici Gaming. But since we have some time, we discuss this as the days progress. But Dakota, with you having you here, some questions that we were surprised about throughout TI. For instance, were there any heroes that you were very surprised to see come up so often? Maybe the Ember coming into TI5?
For me, it was probably Naga and her importance as a support. We got a bit of a teaser of it coming into TI, mild play maybe in qualifier. I saw a bit of it in BTS Americas, but now it's definitely in full force, especially for most of the Western teams. It's first pick, first ban priority.
I think it's mostly because Secret and EG prioritize it so much. Just because, again, Secret and EG, they're the team that likes to delay, fight at the perfect moment. And Naga can just prevent that one, like 3-0, 4-0, that can just ruin everything. And especially with a lot of teams like running Undying and a lot of teams that like want to force your tower very early, 7 seconds does not sound like a lot, but it's a lot in the grand scheme of things. And I think that it just moves the window from like the 20-minute fight to like a 28-minute fight when Anti-Mage just has like one more item, when he has a Manta to counter the Orchid, for example. And it's just a very nice safeguard. They also play it very offensively. We've seen Naga Siren in dual lanes with Tusk in the off lane, and you would think, okay, 2 melee heroes, they without like a really good snowball is decent, but like how are they supposed to do very well versus 2 range supports that might zone them out? But they're actually very tanky. They have a lot of kill potential and a lot of armor, and they can actually farm very well in the lane. You actually can't usually do 2 like a weak carry and a strong support versus those 2 heroes. So I think the flexibility in her, as well as her ability to transition in the late game, like we saw Saniko on Na'Vi with his super farm Naga Siren, it also secures your late game. Good versus BKB. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, she's so flexible. That's what makes her so